In every era of human history, men have tried to understand the mysterious depths of the female mind. From the great Stoic philosophers of antiquity to the thinkers of our time, the pursuit has remained the same: clarity, wisdom, and the power to master oneself in the face of uncertainty. Today we turn not only to the ancient guidance of Stoicism, but also to the modern reflections of philosopher Agnes Callard, a voice who reminds us that self-examination is not a luxury, but a necessity. She teaches us that true freedom comes when you strip away illusions and confront reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. When it comes to women and attraction, men often get lost in illusions. They believe effort alone will guarantee affection, that chasing endlessly will ensure loyalty, or that being too generous will build admiration. But in truth, none of these assumptions hold the power they think they do. The female mind, complex and layered, has its own unspoken weaknesses, vulnerabilities that can be understood not to exploit but to protect yourself from unnecessary suffering. Because if you don't understand how these dynamics work, you risk falling into the same traps that millions of men fall into every single day. Chasing validation, giving away their power, and living under the illusion that love is bought through. Sacrificed Agnes Callard speaks of philosophy as a guide for transformation, and in this transformation, the man who seeks wisdom must first learn what not to do, what not to chase, and what illusions to discard. This is where Stoicism joins psychology, helping men separate desire from reality, appearance from truth. And the truth is this: women, like men, are driven by instinct, emotion, and hidden psychological needs that often go unspoken. If you know these, you no longer play blindly. You gain clarity, confidence, and calmness, the very essence of Stoic masculinity. So in this video, we will uncover 7 key female weaknesses that every man must know. Not to control, not to manipulate, but to stand firm in who you are. 2. Know what attracts, what repels, and what truly commands respect. Because a man who understands psychology, guided by Stoic discipline, becomes unshakable. Let's begin. The first weakness every man must understand is uncertainty. Women are deeply influenced by the emotional atmosphere you create. Unlike men, who often anchor their sense of security in logic, women are more likely to attach themselves to how they feel in your presence. This is why uncertainty, whether in relationships, attraction, or even in daily conversations, becomes a weakness that shapes their decisions. Agnes Callard, reflecting on philosophy, reminds us that human beings are creatures of aspiration. We are always reaching for something beyond ourselves, often unsure of what exactly that is. Women, when placed in situations of uncertainty, are pulled into that same aspirational tension. They begin to question, does he value me? Why isn't he chasing me? Why does he seem so calm when others would panic? This uncertainty sparks emotional engagement. And here lies the paradox. When a man tries too hard to offer certainty, to constantly reassure her, to remove all doubt, he actually weakens his position. He gives away the mystery, the challenge, and the very thing that sparks her interest. Women crave stability, yes, but they are intrigued by the man who cannot be fully read, the man who seems to live on his own terms regardless of her approval. This doesn't mean being manipulative. It means embracing Stoic indifference, showing that your happiness does not depend on her actions. The weakness of uncertainty, then, works in your favor only when you master yourself. By not rushing to over-explain, by not seeking validation, by allowing silence to speak louder than words, you create an emotional atmosphere where she is drawn in, not because you forced her, but because her own psychology compels her to solve the puzzle you've become. And as Marcus Aurelius once noted, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Your thoughts must be calm, disciplined, unshaken. That is what creates the aura of mystery and strength that a woman cannot ignore. Part 2. The I. Weakness of validation. The second weakness, closely tied to the first, is validation. Every human being seeks validation in some form, but in female psychology, this need can be magnified, especially in the realm of attraction. Women want to be admired, noticed, and confirmed as valuable. But here is where most men fail. They give validation too freely, too quickly, and without boundaries. Agnes Callard often warns about the danger of pursuing approval as a replacement for genuine growth. She writes that we sometimes mistake praise for progress, but they are not the same. The same is true in relationships. The man who constantly validates a woman ends up being seen not as strong, but as needy. His compliments lose weight, his attention loses meaning, and his presence loses value. This is the psychological trap. A woman's weakness for validation is real, but it only becomes powerful when you feed it endlessly. If you hold back, if you give validation selectively, and with purpose, suddenly your words carry gravity, your presence commands respect. She feels that earning your attention is meaningful, not guaranteed. This scarcity creates desire. From a Stoic perspective, validation must not enslave you. Epictetus taught that if you desire only what is within your control, you will never be disappointed. Validation from others is not in your control, your discipline is. And ironically, when you no longer chase validation, you create the exact atmosphere that makes others, including women, crave yours. The weakness of validation, then, is a double-edged sword. For her, it drives her to seek approval. For you, it tempts you to give it too easily. But when guided by philosophy, you transform this into strength. You remain calm, deliberate, and scarce with your praise. And in doing so, you protect yourself while simultaneously amplifying your influence. The third weakness every man must recognize is emotional overload. Women, by their nature, are often more attuned to emotional signals than men. They can pick up subtle changes in tone, mood, or energy in ways men sometimes overlook. This heightened sensitivity can be powerful, but it also makes them more vulnerable to emotional extremes. Agnes Callard reminds us that aspiration is not just intellectual, it is emotional. We aspire toward ideals we cannot yet fully understand, and this aspiration often leaves us overwhelmed. In the same way, many women live in a constant state of emotional aspiration, reaching for a vision of love, security, or status that often collides with reality. When reality fails to match their expectations, the result is emotional overload. This is where men often make a mistake. They rush in to absorb, to fix, to solve every emotional storm. But in doing so, they weaken themselves. A Stoic man understands that he cannot control another person's emotions. He can only control his own responses. If you allow her emotional storms to dictate your state of mind, you lose your grounding. The weakness of emotional overload means that a woman may at times test you, not deliberately, but through her emotions, spilling into the relationship. She may overreact, dramatize, or shift moods suddenly. The unprepared man feels destabilized, but the disciplined man remains calm. He listens, he acknowledges, but he does not drown with her. This calmness, this refusal to be swept away, is what earns respect. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In moments of emotional overload, she looks not for a man who panics with her, but for a man who holds the line. If you can be that pillar, she will feel both challenged and safe in your presence, a paradox that deeply draws her in. Part 4. The weakness of boredom. The fourth weakness is boredom. Human beings by nature crave novelty, but women, especially in the psychology of relationships, are often more sensitive to boredom than men. This doesn't mean they are shallow. It means that emotional stimulation plays a larger role in their sense of fulfillment. Agnes Callard, in her Reflections on Philosophy, points out that our lives are defined by projects, by goals that stretch us forward. When those projects stagnate, we fall into despair. For women, relationships are often lived as emotional projects. When a man becomes too predictable, when every move can be guessed, when he loses his drive to grow, boredom begins to creep in. And boredom, left unchecked, erodes attraction. Most men make the mistake of thinking that once they have secured Her attention, their work is done. They stop pursuing growth. They become repetitive. They lose the spark of ambition. This is the very moment when her weakness for boredom exposes itself, and she begins to seek stimulation elsewhere. Not always in another man, but sometimes in drama, arguments, or unnecessary conflicts, just to feel alive. The Stoic response is not to create artificial drama or play manipulative games, but to commit yourself to constant growth. As Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Your growth is the antidote to her boredom. A man with purpose, discipline, and curiosity never becomes stale. He remains challenging, not because he tries to entertain her, but because his very existence is a moving target, always improving, always expanding. Understand this weakness, and you will see why many relationships fail. It is not always betrayal or anger that destroys them. It is often something quieter. Monotony. If you are the man who never stops evolving, her boredom will never find a home in your presence. Part 5. The weakness of inconsistency. The fifth weakness is inconsistency, the inability to remain steady in thought, feeling, or desire. Women are often praised for their intuition, but intuition without discipline can lead to inconsistency. One day she may speak of love, the next she may question it. One day she may admire your strength, the next she may resent it. This inconsistency is not always deliberate. It reflects the shifting tides of emotion and circumstance. Agnes Callard's philosophy highlights a profound truth. Aspiration means living in tension between what we are and what we aim to become. This tension is inherently unstable. In women, this instability often expresses itself in inconsistency. It is not that she doesn't know what she wants. It is that what she wants changes as her emotions change. Men who misunderstand this weakness either overreact or collapse. They chase after every mood swing, trying to realign themselves to whatever she feels in the moment. Or they grow resentful, demanding absolute consistency where none can be found. The Stoic man takes a different path. He accepts inconsistency as part of human nature, but he does not let it govern him. Epictetus taught that if you wish to be free, wish only for what depends on you. Her moods, her sudden changes of heart, her shifting desires, these do not depend on you. What depends on you is your steadiness, your principles, your discipline. In the face of her inconsistency, you remain consistent. That contrast itself creates attraction. Her inconsistency becomes her weakness because it exposes her need for grounding. And when you provide that grounding, not by bending to her shifts, but by standing firm in your own, she feels both challenged and secure. You are the steady flame in a world of flickering candles, and that is what makes you irreplaceable. The sixth weakness is the need for approval from the crowd. Women, just like men, live within social ecosystems. But psychology shows us that women are often more deeply influenced by social perception. What friends think, what family says, what strangers on social media comment. This sensitivity to the crowd can be both a strength and a weakness. Agnes Callard often writes about how much of our aspiration is shaped by others. We do not simply want things in isolation. We want what we believe is admired, celebrated, or praised by the people around us. For women, this external validation can sometimes outweigh personal conviction. It is why trends shape behavior, why opinions of peers can sway decisions, and why even love can sometimes be tested against the approval of others. The mistake men make is underestimating this influence. They assume her love exists in a vacuum, untouched by the world outside. But the truth is that her weakness for social approval can push her toward choices that may not align with her deepest feelings. She may love a man privately but feel conflicted if her friends disapprove. She may admire strength in solitude but lean toward comfort when the crowd whispers otherwise. The Stoic man understands this, but he does not fight the crowd. He rises above it. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. The key is not to seek her approval by bending to social pressures, but to remain grounded in your own truth. When you demonstrate that you do not live for the opinions of the crowd, you embody a freedom she secretly craves. Her weakness for approval becomes her chain, but your independence becomes her liberation. Part 7. The weakness of desire for security. The seventh and final weakness is the desire for security. At the heart of female psychology lies a fundamental truth. Women are drawn toward safety, stability, and protection. This is not limited to physical security, though that matters. It extends to emotional safety, financial security, and the stability of a man's character. Agnes Callard argues that aspiration is about reaching toward what feels like completion, and for many women, security feels like that completion. It soothes anxiety, calms uncertainty, and allows them to flourish. But this very desire for security can also be a weakness. Why? Because it often leads women to overlook red flags, to settle for comfort over growth, or to attach themselves to men who appear strong but lack depth. For men, the lesson is simple but profound. Do not build your identity on chasing her security. Build it on your own foundation. A Stoic man does not promise eternal safety. He demonstrates eternal discipline. Security is not something you sell to her. It is something she witnesses in you. Your consistency, your purpose, your refusal to be shaken by circumstances, that is what makes her feel safe. Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The same is true for security. A man who needs little from the world is unshakable, and a woman, sensing this independence, feels both the safety and the challenge of being in his presence. Her weakness for security becomes the bond that ties her to a man of true discipline. Ending, we have uncovered 7 weaknesses of the female mind, not to exploit, but to understand. Uncertainty, validation, emotional overload, boredom, inconsistency, approval from the crowd, and the desire for security. Each of these is a vulnerability, but also a mirror reflecting what all humans wrestle with in different forms. Agnes Callard teaches us that philosophy is not about escaping desire, but about clarifying it. Stoicism teaches us that power is not about controlling others, but about mastering ourselves. Together, these truths reveal the path for men. Do not chase endlessly, do not drown in illusions, do not bend to every mood or every crowd. Stand firm, grow endlessly, live with discipline. Because the man who knows himself is the man who cannot be shaken by anyone else. And when you embody this strength, her weaknesses no longer threaten you. They draw her toward you. So remember this: you do not become powerful by controlling women. You become powerful by controlling yourself. That is what Stoicism teaches. That is what philosophy confirms. And that is the wisdom every man must carry.